gentlemen, for taking the time out to sit down one-on-one with DMVDaily and the voters who will be paying attention to this.
Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate you coming in today.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys have
And I
jumped
see
into
Larry's formal, I can casual, but
I like that look. You look relaxed. I got a bunch of meetings all day. He's working hard.
I'm working today.
He's staying in the headquarters.
behind the phone. That's what
Right.
Well, getting into it, let's go. Don't know
Yeah.
Larry Hogan, Boyd Rutherford. First, give the viewers an explanation of who you are and what prompted you two to decide to run together to be the next governor and lieutenant governor for the state of Maryland.
Well, thanks for the opportunity again. And I'm a guy who's spent most of my life in the private sector. I'm a small business guy. I've cared about the state for my entire life and have been involved in lots of different civic issues. I'm a concerned citizen. I have some experience in state government. I'm a former cabinet secretary, but I'm not a politician. I've never held elective office. I've spent most of my life doing other things in the private sector. My business, we brought hundreds of companies and thousands of jobs into the state of Maryland. That's what I do. But what prompted me to get into the race was just I'm fed up with politics as usual in Annapolis, and I'm concerned that our state is way off track and headed in the wrong direction. And I knew that if we were going to be able to turn this state around, it's going to be an enormous challenge. I needed to find the most talented, most capable, smartest guy I could as my running mate, and I found that man in Boyd Rutherford. And let me brag about him a little bit. Brag about him before he gets to say his piece. I mean, he and I had the pleasure of serving together in the cabinet and the previous governor under Bob Ehrlich, and he was my favorite cabinet member. We used to sit next to each other and complain about things that were going on, but did a tremendous job as the Secretary of DGS, Department of General Services. He was an Assistant Secretary of Agriculture under the Bush administration at the federal level, and an Associate Administrator of the GSA. So Boyd, he's also a private sector guy who has a consulting business. He's a lawyer. He knows what it's like also to be out there struggling to meet a payroll and balance a checkbook, but he has tremendous experience in actually running state government and at the federal level. So we're two guys that are not part of the problem, but we know enough about state government to know how to fix the problem. And we know what it's like in the real world, which none of the other folks that we're potentially running against have any experience in the private sector whatsoever. They've been politicians most of their lives.
Well, I'm going to back it up a little bit. Larry, you didn't mention that you grew up in Prince George's County. I grew up in Washington, D.C. Went to school there, went to Howard University as an undergraduate, moved to New York after graduation.
Before Howard University, you're a Carroll guy. I went to DeMatha, so we were opposite teams. Around the same time, but we were.
Yeah, it was around the same time. Some of his friends are guys I went to school with. So it's. I always tell my kids, the older you get, the world gets smaller. It's just that simple. But
by the way, my daughter had a crush on his son in high school. I don't know if we should say that on
Yeah,
she still does. She's like, "You're picking Boyd Rutherford, man. His son, he used to be so hot back in high school."
His wife she had a house in Howard County, and her kids went to the same high school as my kids did. Her kids are a little older, and I guess Marshall's closer in their age. And I have one son, two daughters, and two of them live on the West Coast. Marshall is in Los Angeles, Lauren is in San Francisco, and then a daughter over at Salisbury. Larry mentioned my background. I went to law school at University of Southern California, so I followed Trojan football in particular.
And I'm a Florida State Seminole, so we have a little talk about that as well.
We have something to talk about.
The Terps?
Oh, I'm a huge Terps fan.
I'm a Terps basketball fan. Maryland's a basketball school. It's not a football
That's true.
school.
I'm sort of
that
way,
way. They're really going to have some trouble when they get to the Big Ten, but that's another story.
But after hearing Boyd telling me about the Trojans winning the national championship all the time, finally the Seminoles finally stepped up this year. So I quieted them down a little bit.
Yeah, quieted them down a lot. I started out of school in sales. I was a salesman in technology. Moved to the West Coast, and I sold something that was called time sharing, which now is basically the cloud. It shows how technology comes back. We took data, put it on our IBM computers, and provided software to businesses. And that was called time sharing, and the mini computers and all came in and replaced that. And now they call it the cloud. It just shows how it all goes back. Now, of course, telecommunications is much quicker and much faster. What brought me to this point? I had not expected to run for office. That was not something that I was really interested in. I've always saw myself as more of an operational person when it comes to business or it comes to government, getting things done more than anything else. I didn't necessarily feel that I would be the policymaker or a person standing out there in front of the crowd. But Larry asked me. I could see the direction that Maryland has been going over the last several years, that there's some real challenges out there and it's not getting better. We just mentioned how a friend is moving to Florida, a retired couple is moving to Florida, and they're essentially taking their tax dollars with them. We're seeing what's happening. I say how my wife, her mother wasn't doing so well, so a couple of weeks ago, she had to fly out to Los Angeles, and we went out of Dulles. And driving on the Beltway and then the Dulles access road, you see the businesses that have made conscious decisions to be in Northern Virginia and not in Maryland. And a lot of that you can't necessarily quantify because they never considered Maryland. So it's not on DBED's list saying, oh, we were competing with these different states and jurisdictions for this business. There was no competition. They
and
just decided.
That's a really good point, because we have quantified, Change Maryland quantified the number of businesses that left Maryland.
Right,
and we've lost 6,500 businesses over the past 7 years, and we've lost 7,000 jobs.
Right.
But Boyd's making the point, which is an excellent one. People made decisions to come to the Washington metropolitan area, and they decided to go. They all went to Virginia.
Right.
None of them.
I'll give you an anecdotal, example of that. Last week, I went to the event down at the Maryland Science Center. I forgot the name of it, but the DEA sponsored an event at the Science Center that I went to, and I was talking to a gentleman who's a contractor out at Aberdeen, and he was saying how there's another contractor that just won a contract with Aberdeen, and they make the UAVs, or the drones, the small drones. They have decided they're going to set up their manufacturing facility in Virginia, even though their contract is at Aberdeen. And the guy said, you're going to drive 2 hours to get to your client, your customer? And he said,
taxes.
It's better for us to be in Northern Virginia than it is to be in Maryland. So he is willing to do that transit, 2 hour transit. That's like going to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So speaking of that,